So I'm just starting this video by inking, and you know, it's not going to get too laborious. I promise you. It will be jump cuts throughout this process. But at the moment, as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm inking the outline using the Stylefile 0.4 fineliner, which is my weapon of choice when it comes to outlines. I also use a 0.5, and I also use a 0.3 every so often. I think 3 is as low as I go nowadays. I used to use 0.1s and 0.2s, but you can only really use them sizes if you're working very small, and I don't work that small anymore. And also I favour a heavier line. The pen you can see me using on the glasses here, this is a Pigma Graphic number 1, which is the thinnest of the big nibs, and again, this is really quality ink, archival black ink, which means it keeps for a very long time, obviously. And yeah, I just really like the line. The nibs break up very easily, which is the only problem about them. They're not very durable. I don't mind it though. I remember Ethan Van Sciver, the comic book artist, he talked about these nibs sort of break down into a sort of brush eventually. That's what happens with them, and I'd rather like that, because it becomes a sort of mixture between a brush marker and a hard bullet nib, and yeah, it works really well for me. So as you can see, I'm thickening the lines up here, make sure they've got enough weight for the size of the drawing that I'm doing. Nice sort of, you know, heavier line. When I eventually get round to colouring this, which you will see in this video, I'm going to start colouring the glasses first, and that's where I'll give you a lowdown on the sort of the colouring theory that I'm going to use. And I'm specifically going to be talking about how to shade using colour, using light and shade with colour. Because if you're doing a full colour piece, or if I'm doing a full colour piece, what I tend to do what I'm doing now, which is I create what is essentially known as a wireframe, which is I'll ink the black line in like this, sort of wireframe inking, and then I will colour inside it. So now I'm starting on the glasses, and I'm using, as you can see, I'm using this is a Stabilo fineliner, and I can't remember, it's a magenta, I think it's called, this one. And the reason I'm using that in the glasses is because I'm going to do a sort of pink shade. And you can use a black fine liner to do the fine details, but if you've got a very dark version of the colour of the tint you're going to use that instead, because the overall effect is much more satisfying, as you'll see. So I'm just getting the details of the eyes in at the moment, and as you can see, the glasses also overlap the rim of his hat, so I'll need to do the rim of his hat as well. Get all those little details in there before I start dropping in the overall colour. So just getting the edges of his eyebrow in there and all that, as you can see. Then the brow over this side. And once they're in, then I can drop the general colour. Now, very importantly, you need to use, for fine lining and for colour, you need to use 2 different types of based ink. So this ink I'm using at the moment, this is watercolour ink, and I'm going to use alcohol markers to go over in colour. This is very important. If I use alcohol based fine liner and then I use an alcohol based colour over the top, it will run. If I use 2 lots of watercolour, it will run. If I use watercolour and alcohol based, then it won't run. always worth remembering, right? I made a lot of mistakes early on because there was a bunch of overhead projector markers that I really favoured, and unfortunately they ran with every alcohol colour I put over the top of them. So laying down colour now. Now you see the way I'm laying down this colour. It's not all random. Very careful strokes. I go from top to bottom. You can go any which way, but do them nice and clear like that, not overlapping. We'll get to the reason in a minute why you need to do it like this. There you go. So I've just laid the base colour down now. I will start to drop in my shade. Now bear in mind I'm only using 2 different pink pens for this and a fine liner. I will be using a pencil as well, but the alcohol markers I'm using 2 different ones. I'm using a full so first of all, Stylefile. These numbers don't relate to any other marker, so you need to know that it's Stylefile. A Stylefile 420 and a Stylefile 454. So that's the pastel pink, and what's the other one called? I'll have a quick look. It is the cerise. So the 420 and the 454 are the codes anyway. The number and the numerical codes. That's important that I'm only using them 2, and I'll come to why in a minute. So I'm dropping in this. This is the 454 that I'm dropping in now. The cerise. And there you go, just dropping in. So I'm dropping in the major shadows there. The major shadows where they fall. You'll get used to where they fall. This goes back to basic art, which is shapes. Our light hits shapes and edges and that kind of thing. Just dropping that in. Again, you can see I'm not just going mad dropping colour all over the place. I'm trying to be very careful not to overlap if I can help it. Colour I've already done. So this is because with alcohol markers, they're not like paint markers. There you go, pencil. This is the pencil I'm going to use. Do even more shading. Drop a little bit more what they call low lights in. Yeah. Give it a bit more depth again. So yeah, alcohol markers, if you lay them down once very carefully, then you can lay the same colour over the top and it lays more pigment down. Now you're going to see when I do the rim of the hat, you will see this in practice. So the pencil, sorry if my hand's getting in the way, it's very annoying. I didn't get a great angle on the old camera, but you get the gist, right? So you can see me blending. I blend with my finger as well. If your finger's just slightly moist, you can blend really well with a high quality pencil. And I stress a high quality. It's got to be a high quality pencil. It can't be that sort of, pound shop rubbish. That is never going to work. You need a really, really good high quality one. I'm using a Caran D'Ache pencil. Caran D'Ache, the Super Color Soft. They're really, really high quality pencils. Unfortunately, they're very expensive. The more high quality pencil you get, the more expensive they are. But that generally goes for any art supply anyway. You're going to have to spend some money if you're going to go expensive. I don't encourage beginners to get top quality art materials because you want to practice a lot. What I did early on is I just practiced with ballpoint pens. Did a lot of work with ballpoint pens because they're cheap as chips, and you don't have to worry about the ink running out, replacing. Whenever I have to replace my art supplies at the moment, it costs me a fortune every time. But that's because I'm exhibiting and selling my work now, so it's got to be good, and it's got to be archival. It's got to be something that's not going to, fade over a few years and all that sort of stuff. In the beginning, you don't have to worry about that. So just get what you need to get. So yeah, I'm just doing this pencil, dropping in the low lights, which gives it a lot more depth under the rim of the hat there. Just lightly dust over there. You see that? Lightly dust. Blend it slightly with the finger. Very nice effect. You don't need to overdo it. Less is more. Again, less is more. I'm quite heavy-handed with the pencil. You see some pencil artists, and they're really, really light on the touch. Really, really light. So now, look at this. going over this rim like this, that is the first colour I used, the 420 again. But because I went over it so lightly the first time, I can go over it again, and it just gives me an extra shade, which is not the much darker shade cerise that I use. It's not the 454, it's still on the 420. Because I laid the 420 down the first time, I can go back over the top with it and just lay down that slightly darker shade.